I've been so frustrated today about some of the reporting about an attack by Israel last night. It's reporting like this from the BBC. Jabalia, Israel airstrike reportedly kills dozens at Gaza refugee camp. Like, you know, just goes and bombs a refugee camp. And here too, on Sky, I got to admit, we were running reports that Israel deliberately attacked a refugee camp and, you know, horror and dismay. Well, let us be clear. What Israel actually attacked was a military centre of the Hamas terrorist group that runs Gaza. A military centre that Hamas deliberately concealed in tunnels and rooms under that refugee camp, which is really a city now, which is why there is such a big crater, because, reporters say, locals saw sinkholes opening up, the ground giving away underneath them after the bombing, which suggests tunnels collapsing under their feet. Now, what's more, Israel had warned residents for a couple of weeks to leave that area, but Hamas told them to stay. And that's because, as I showed you last night, the leader of Hamas actually saying, you saw him, he wants women and children to actually die, civilians, Palestinian civilians, to die, to give Palestinians what he called revolutionary spirit. He wants human shields and he wants them to die. Now, Israel says the bombing actually worked. It killed the local Hamas commander, one of the leaders of the October 7 terror attack on Israel, plus about 50 of his terrorists who were using that compound and the tunnels underneath for training and operations. Yet, once again, Foreign Minister Penny Wong, I'll have something more to say about her in a second, refused to back Israel, implying somehow it did wrong.
The destruction of the Jabalia refugee camp, it happened as Israel was targeting a military, a Hamas target. Is that reasonable? Is it proportionate in response to the atrocity perpetrated upon Israel and its civilians?
Well, certainly the images out of that attack are very distressing. What I want to keep saying is Australia continues to assert the importance of international humanitarian law. As I said, even in conflict, we have rules that all of us, Israel, Australia, and countries throughout the international community have signed up to, and it is incumbent upon Israel to do all that it can to protect civilian life as it engages militarily.
More on this sinister game that Wong is playing later in the show, but first, joining me from Tel Aviv is regular guest filmmaker and commentator Ami Horowitz. Ami, how much frustration is there in Israel over the coverage in the West of what's going on?
Absolutely incredible outrage. You know, I'm in Tel Aviv right now. I mean, I've been all over the country. I've been in Ramallah. But right now I'm in Tel Aviv, and I'm out at night. I'm having drinks with people. We're talking about the situation, obviously. And these are all people of the left that I'm talking to, right? That's what Tel Aviv is, the center of Israel's left. And every single one of them understands the game. They're not confused by this, by their fellow left travelers in the international news media. They understand that these guys have an agenda and they're disgusted by it. Look, they're looking for things to confirm their bias, right? Confirmation bias. But it's more sinister than that, because do they really not know that the hospital, for example, that Israel supposedly hit wasn't really hit or killed by them? Or the refugee camp just mentioned? I can't imagine they're that stupid, right? Either they're stupid or a liar. It's a game I play all the time. You're either lying or you're just playing dumb, right? No, they're looking for these examples. They jump on them because they want to believe it for whatever reason they want, right? You could say it's anti-Israel bias, anti-Semitic bias. I don't know what it is. But the point is that we know for sure they are looking for a reason to jump on these. They don't vet them properly because they fit their narrative. That's what's happening here. This is not new. This has happened time after time again when Israel gets involved in military action, whether it be in Gaza or the West Bank or wherever. Look, I was just in Jabjulia. Jabjulia is a Arab village, completely Arab village here in Israel. And I wanted to ask these Arab Israelis, how do you feel about the coverage? You see this going on. Do you think Israel is striking civilians on purpose? Because that's what we're talking about here. They look at me like I was crazy. They said, of course not. They said, look, our heart bleeds. These are all our fellow Muslim Arabs, for sure. and our heart bleeds for anybody being killed who's innocent. But they said Israel's not trying to kill them. Israel's trying to avoid casualties. It just happens. They understood that, right? Look, if Israel wanted to kill civilians, like purposely, Andrew, they'd all be dead. There wouldn't be 5,000, 6,000 dead. There would be 500,000 dead tomorrow. Israel had the capability to flatten that place and make it into glass. They choose not to, even though their soldiers are in harm's way. It may be easier to flatten it all, and their soldiers' lives would not be at risk. The soldiers wouldn't be dying like they are today, going through buildings and booby traps because things are still standing. It's a game the media is playing. It's a sick, revolting game.
But it's funny, you know, I have seen interviewers, believe it or not, Ami, on Egyptian TV, on Saudi Arabian TV, actually being tougher on Hamas than the left in Australia, than this government, this Labor government in Australia, saying, for instance, why don't you build tunnels and bomb shelters for your own people? Why do you leave them up on the surface to die? Because they know that's Hamas's game. That's what they're saying. I don't hear the Labor Party here say that. Now, how do you explain why so many on the left have turned against Israel? You know, I think is it because Israel represents capitalism, they're successful, Israel is richer, and we all, the left has to hate the rich guy? Is it because they're whiter than the people they're fighting? Is that it? Is it race? What is it?
Yes. I was going to say it's going to take me like 10 minutes to explain it, but you just explained it. Look, it just comes down. There's a reason why there's an intersectional coalition backing Gaza and Hamas. It's because they look at Israel. Israel is a more successful country, obviously, in the region. In a region of lack of success, there's success, and they're a model of the West. The left hates that. The left has always had a war on excellence, right? Because by definition, if one place is excellent or one person is successful, in their warped mind, it means that somebody obviously was unsuccessful, because the only way one country or one person could have been successful was stepping on the neck of someone else. And in this case, they go, oh, it's so obvious. Israel's successful, high-tech sector, wonderful economy, great high level of education and living standards. The only way they could have gotten it was by stepping on the neck of the Palestinians and their Arab neighbors.
Correct.
That's the thinking of the left.
So totally. It's funny now that you mention it. I was thinking the only time that the left really went for Israel, really supported it, this is back when the film Exodus was made. Hollywood wouldn't make that again. Was when it was just starting, so it was struggling, and it was full of kibbutzes, full of socialists. Socialists were in the government, etc., etc. You know, we're going to share, we're going to live the Marxist dream. But since it's become more explicitly capitalist, all that support is gone.
You got it. Okay, I'm not that old. I wasn't alive when that was going on, so I can't tell you exactly the move then, but yes, you got it exactly right. Israel was considered a decolonial power at the time because they threw off the yokes of the British. And then the only reason why the Soviets actually voted for Israel's existence was this weird quirk in history where they thought Israel was going to become one of their orbit satellite countries because the kibbutzim, that they were going to become socialist. And in fact, for the first few generations, they were, with a little bit of a Jewish capitalist bent, and they have moved over time decisively to be more of a free market society. And you can see how the anti-Israel sentiment has grown with the success of Israel, because the success came from becoming free market. And as that success continued to ramp up, you can see along with it was the hatred of Israel.
I think that's so true. And how tragic and sad and ironic in a sick way that the prime victims of the attack by Hamas were the kibbutzes that were for peace and sort of socialist values along that border area. The whole thing's so sick. Ami Horowitz, keep safe. Thank you so much for your time.